I never really feel British.
Being British isn't all it's cracked up to be anymore.
I am quite proud to be British.
I just don't feel British.
I'm proud to be British, and I think we'll always be proud of being British.
I don't like tea that much. I don't like the Queen that much.
My relationship with the word British is weird and iffy and complex.
My relationship with the word British is quite negative.
Now I would never say I was British.
Hi, my name's Lena. I'm 27 years old. I'm from the Midlands. My grandmother was Welsh. My mum is Irish and grew up in Scotland. My dad's side of the family are, well, pretty English from what I can tell. I mean, I drink a lot of tea. I'm a big queuer. No one from other countries gets my jokes. So I'm like, British, right? End of discussion. I can be English, British, European, and no one can...
This means that the UK has voted to leave the European Union.
I expect to go to the palace and offer my resignation.
One of the top Google searches in the UK, what is the European Union?
The British people have spoken and the answer is, we're out.
The sun has risen on an independent United Kingdom.
Write your own obituary. Balance your own books. Look down your own nose while you go to work with heavy looks. Tickle your own tyrants. Roam your own lands. Appeal to your own governments. Deal your own hands. Bend your own neck. Break your own back. Tune out your own thoughts. Lose your own knack. Disappoint your own ancestors. Bend to your own whims. Go back to where you came from. 'Cause I don't know where you've been. So, as 2016 ended, we all joked that it was almost a meme, or perhaps a very disturbing game of Sin City. In the UK, we voted to leave the union of countries that made us economically and politically stable, whilst guaranteeing our human rights and making sure all labels on our jam were correct. Worse, signs like this were used to persuade people that it was the way forward. Joe Cox, a Labour Party politician, was shot and stabbed by a man heard shouting, "Put Britain first." In fact, The Independent reported the hate crime in some areas went up by 100%. While we panicked that we were being too soft and too sympathetic, the UN Refugee Agency reported that 2016 was the deadliest for migrants. Now, in 2017, white supremacy is on the rise. While white nationalists march and kill in the US, acid attacks have become a big thing in London, and in Finsbury Park, a white man drove his van into a group of Muslims exiting a mosque. Theresa May and her government are looking increasingly less likely to be able to execute a Brexit that won't make us poorer, and Scotland, Wales and Ireland are all thinking about their options when it comes to staying in the UK. But we've got to keep calm and carry on, right? Right? Even though Britain is a name we give to some land, it's also a real place, right? It will always be here. It's just a fact of life. It's this huge, everlasting thing we don't really need to acknowledge. It's just there, like gravity. Or is it scarily similar in matter to J.M. Barrie's Neverland? If we don't believe in it, will it cease to be really there at all?
Yeah.
So 2017 doesn't look how we expected it to. Some people say that immigrants are the reason, that we're losing our nationhood altogether, and it's because of these people from other places coming here for, we're not really sure what reason. We haven't even heard of some of these places. Is it so bad over there? What do we owe them anyway? When are they going back? Before we answer that question, we have to go back to the beginning of this video. I implied that because of my blood, because of my birthright, I was British. Now, getting something as a birthright is something we've kind of given up on quite logically as a nation. If we reverted on that now, we'd have to revert pretty much anything we believe to be true. Wages, voting, education outside of the home. We already have given up on birthright. Oh, except the royal family. Have I talked about how much we're obsessed with the royal family? Birthright is not a concept that we now run a modern civilization on. That is not the principles of Britain, hence Parliament, hence democracy. To say somebody isn't genetically British and to ask them where they're really from is only a sound response if you really want to go back to medieval Britain where 99.9% of the population died of boils. When people say Britain as a birthright, we often mean that the person was born in Britain. And anyone who wasn't born in Britain shouldn't automatically come to this country. They should stay in their country, where they were born, and get their government to look after them. That's their birthright, right? Why are they coming in our country? Well, the thing is, they would have. If it wasn't for their birthright being taken away by... Welcome to the shortest and potentially most disrespectful summary of the British Empire you ever did encounter. See this map? At one point, yeah, we controlled all of that, mainly through force. Much killing. The empire governed roughly a quarter of the world's population, covered about a quarter of the world's landmass, and dominated nearly all of the oceans. All of the oceans. Yeah, but we weren't that bad, were we? We didn't have concentration camps. Yes, we did. Everywhere. It's estimated that if we were to pay reparations to Africa alone for the amount of stuff that we stole from them and the amount of people we killed, it would be somewhere close to £150 trillion. And that's just Africa. Middle Eastern conflicts, kind of started by us. Pakistan versus India, kind of our fault. Republic of Ireland versus Northern Ireland, yep, we definitely had a part in that. Safe to say, if people are fleeing poverty or grievous conflict, yeah, that was probably us. So it's 2 a.m. and I can't sleep. I guess I found out today that a guy from, that I was friends with from school, he is now the head of one of the biggest alt-right movements in the country. I don't want to say its name, but I've been thinking a lot about this idea of locality and who's near to a problem, who's far away from a problem. And I often think the reason that we don't react to problems is because we don't think they're very close. That perceived distance means that we feel either unqualified to interact with it, or we don't feel like it'll be a threat to us. And neither's true, is it? Because it's just getting closer and closer. It's very hard, evil is local. Evil's always been local. I have a feeling if you looked in my veins it'd be even more local than that,
Yeah.
So, how does somebody who grew up a few streets from you, went to all the same schools, had the same background, lived in the same part of a city, have such different views to you? I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've come up with a few ideas. Past parenting, gender, personality. There's something bigger going on here. The way I see it, bear with. There's 3 groups at play in this who is British debate. There's the right, or the wrong as I like to. There's the right and the far right. Important to remember that they're different things. And they're over here the immigrants are taking our jobs and our resources, and immigration is on an all-time high, which statistically definitely isn't the whole story. They derive a lot of reasons for thinking the way they do from their argument that they are truly British, and they're proud to be so. And then on the other side, we've got what a lot of people call the black and minority ethnic communities, some of whom are recent migrants. And they can kind of be like, we are British, you dickheads, and we're not taking your jobs, we're helping the economy thrive. Plus, a lot of us only had to leave our places behind because you fucked the world up. And another thing, did you know that 20 million British white people emigrated during the rule of the British Empire and turned whole countries white? Simmer down. They are fighting to have their Britishness recognised. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that a lot of them feel proud of it. Now, white British liberals, here we are in the middle. Hello, I'm in there. We're here either generating white noise or going, diversity is important, Don't worry, we're not racist like them. More worryingly, a lot of us, like I was, seem resistant to acknowledge our Britishness or fight for the good parts of that identity. The problem with that is, I reckon, that our disinterest in Britishness negates our ability to relate to either group, like we're above Britishness or something. But really we're distancing ourselves from a problem that is as much our duty to think more complexly about as it is anyone's.
If we can't see the alt-right, the EDL, the white nationalists as our problem, you better bet that there is nobody else coming. In fact, I'm willing to go out on a limb and guess that the reason these groups have grown so rapidly and get such an easy platform is because people like me, white British, are unwilling to see these people and these groups as worthy of serious thought. Calling them madmen doesn't cut it, that's underestimating them. It's turning away from all the structural ways we've taught them to be mad. What we missed in education of my generation, what we perhaps missed in the generation above mine, and what we're about to miss for the generation below is the information. What we aren't giving people are the facts they really need to understand their own Britishness. The British flag, or at least, if this seems weird and symbolic to you, what it stands for, has been so neglected and left out of discussions that the right-wing groups have been able to commandeer it without much of a fight. Take a look at all the mounting cultural and political movements that use this flag as their logo, as if implying, pretty lazily, I think, that their movement represents the whole. These flags, these symbols, these functionalities, we need them. This flag gets a lot of people's backs up, makes a lot of people uneasy, or worse, it makes them dismiss the idea of Britishness altogether. So what can we do about it? When you get a weird ingrown hair or a bad boyfriend or a tricky boss, you usually appeal to a friend who's had a similar problem. If we stretch that concept a bit, surely the person we should call is Germany. In Germany, what was your schooling about history like? And did you learn about the world wars separately to the rest of history, or was it just part of what you learned?
Well, it was kind of that when I got into 9th grade, they started to kind of switch up, and then it was whole German lessons, whole the history of Germany, and World War I, World War II, and also the history that has led to such horrible events. It took almost like 3 years of school education to learn about it. It was very honest, no cover-ups at all. Some people think that it's a bit boring to learn about one topic 3 years, like in a period of 3 years. Well,
and in that topic, you only covered the World Wars.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of school time you spend with learning about such horrible events.
What's the name of the class?
Geschichte, history.
Oh, that's just history.
Yeah, it's just history. When you are living in a country that has such a history, I think there isn't really a point in not telling the story and the history of your country.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no matter where you live, your country always has a history that you can learn from.
Like, did you learn about the British Empire at school?
A lot, yeah.
I did. You learn it was shit? Because it was.
Yeah. You know, this is the I think the followers speeches of Hitler, what strategies he used, and propaganda.
And this is all, you can't drop this. This is not optional.
No, you can choose not to learn about it. That's not an option.
Do you think that's good?
I do.
I didn't learn that much about the British Empire in school, and what I did, it was really glossed over. What we did learn about heavily was World War II, the sacrifices that were made, the people that were lost, fighting attitudes that wanted to wipe out whole races of people. We learned how our grandparents gave up their comfort, their luxury, to do what was right. And that's really moving, apart from, it's not the whole story. I asked you on Twitter what your experiences of being a British kid learning about the Empire were. And I'm not going to lie, it wasn't looking good. I went back to the source, the government's freely available curriculum documents, and things weren't looking much better. Whilst it's alluded to briefly, it's one of over 44 non-statutory topics. It looks like it's really up to teachers whether they teach it as a positive or negative thing, or, as is alluded to in lots of studies, not at all.
This is really interesting to me because I don't see our system treating any other kind of mass killing with such huge implications of cultural erasure in this kind of really casual way. It baffles me that when immigration is such a divisive way that politicians can coerce huge amounts of people both ways. Maybe I'm being coerced. I mean, I was born in a litter basket lined with The Guardian. What can I say? But when it is such a huge issue, and when 13% of our population avoid ticking the white or white British box, you have to think about whose history is being catered to here. If you're 14 and you don't tick the white or white British category but consider yourself a British person, if your ancestors chose or maybe had to move here, you're very likely to know a lot more than your fellow peers in your class when you're 14 about the British Empire. I was the 14-year-old white Becky who knew nothing about it. Not putting the British Empire on the curriculum as a mandatory thing amid all the other more important things is, if you think about it, setting white British kids back. Because at the end of the day, if everybody else is more schooled on your history than you are, I'd say that's a breeding ground for ignorance, shame, and resentment. Don't you? Don't you?
Mrs. Thatcher, it's an enormous responsibility to think that you are forming the future generation. How do you feel about it?
Well, sometimes I get very worried about it.
Bottom line, this video isn't a dummy's guide to the British Empire. I urge you to do your own research on that. This is a call to consider more than what we know we don't know. And yes, to get it on the curriculum. Because when we stop seeing taking refugees in as an act of heroism, of charity, and start seeing it as an act of duty, of patriotism, a way to build back to a Britain that isn't great, but good. When we do our homework before we sing our praises, when we stop seeing the future of our country as blue versus red, a winner-takes-all scenario, perhaps we can start to actually get a grip on ourselves. When we go back to where we came from, it's much easier to decide, together, where we're going.
Look, if you children can't get on well together, how do you expect the nations of the world to get on well together?
If Saul Williams said, I have seen in a forest of myself little books from tall trees. Are we all but forestry? Little notebooks of ancient things we were, peeled back into pages and clumsily scribbled on, writing lines for the end of the world. I must not actively sabotage myself or others. I must not actively sabotage myself or others. I must not actively sabotage myself. I must not ask when the trouble came, or why the lady with the tiny hurricanes in her hair made it possible for the pauper to have to pay for the sins of the banker. Swishing Hail Marys under cups and hoping penance lands on someone else. So focused on the evil character of others, we fail to see the evil in ourselves. Part of growing up is reconciling the wolf and the Samaritan that can exist between two ears. Come on, mate, forget it. Let's settle it over some beers. But if we're to use our ancestry as an axe, we must first admit that it's a noose, tying up the others while letting ourselves loose. When you get bitten by a snake, you've got to suck the poison out. Katie Harron did it readily, so let's eradicate your doubts. A nation hoarding truths will eat itself alive. Our history is getting mouldy at the back of a cupboard. Bring it out before it ruins everything in there. Dust it off. Face the mangy Dorito dust-covered facts before others do it for us. I'm white. That's no big deal. I can get dreads like Will Smith and still have mass appeal. In the crematorium we learn that we're all the same when we burn. And why should skin be a bargaining chip on a guest list to a better life? I am white. I'm white. I am white.
This is incomplete. I mean, I believe it, but on a scale of dog's balls to Gandhi, it's probably closer to dog's balls. I can't re-steer Britishness on my own. I've got some ideas on how to move forward. Number one, if you're in Britain, I have started a petition to get the British Empire on the curriculum as a mandatory part of it. We want every kid thoroughly learning about the British Empire so they can make their own informed decision about their attitude to immigration. Number two, take a read of any of these books. They're all bloody brilliant. Use the links in the description and get learning about the British Empire yourself. Number three, I'm making a zine of Britishness, and with the help of Creators for Change, I'm going to send one copy to every MP in the country. I'm also going to make it free online for anybody to view. You can submit your poems, essays, drawings, thoughts, sentences right here. And if you're stuck, I've compiled a little thought experiment / meditation on Britishness from loads of you guys and your experiences of Britishness. You can use that to spark your imagination. Thank you so much for listening. Tell me whether I'm right or wrong in the comments below, and see you around Britain, I guess.
Tell me to go home, but I come from here. I can see it in the eyes that don't want me here. They tell me to play high, but the game ain't fair. Given a level playing field, I make it rain out here. We were running a race and you gave me a handicap. I turn around and have one of my legs detached. Then so you set it up for me the best you could. That ain't justice, winning on just as good.
Right.